Good evening.
Recording in progress.
At this time, we'd like to convene the VTA Board of Directors meeting for Thursday, December 7th, 2023. And Member Lee will be joining us via a just cause provision for remote participation. The just cause provisions requires that a quorum of the board be present in person, which we have tonight. So, Member Lee, may I ask you to make your announcement at this time, if you're with us yet? Well, we'll do that in a moment. So while we await that, a brief safety moment. Please take a moment to identify the nearest exit. The nearest AED is in the east wing. Restrooms are just outside the double doors. And I'd like to welcome members of the public who joined us. Those who would like to address the board in person are encouraged to complete a blue speaker card located at the public information table at the back. And please submit the completed card to the board staff before the item is heard. Virtual attendees can use the raise hand function in Zoom or press 9 on your phone. And we'll be inviting those who attended in person to speak first, followed by those who are on Zoom. To my colleagues, please keep your mics muted unless you're ready to speak, and please call my attention if you wish to speak by raising your hand or turning on the red light on your mic. Elaine, would you please call the roll?
Abikoga? Here. Abikoga's here. Blankley?
Here.
Davis?
Here.
Dean? Foley? Jane?
Here.
Jimenez? Kamei? Kamei is here. Lee? I will come back to Lee. Lee Eng? Here. Lopez?
Here.
Mahan? Montano?
Here.
Rennie?
Here.
Rennie's present. Torres? Turner? Chavez? Here. Chavez is here. Burt?
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay. So we'll move on to orders of the day. We have a revised agenda to reflect minor changes. The revised agenda is on the agenda portal. Plus, we'll be deferring item 6.6 that's on the consent calendar, which is a contract amendment for BKF engineers to an upcoming, we'll defer that to an upcoming meeting. And then any other changes from staff? And seeing none, we need a motion and a second to approve the orders of the day.
So moved.
Second.
Great. And Elaine, can you call the roll?
Yes, Chair. Blankley?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Dean? Dean is absent right now, so I'll call on Montano. Thank you. Foley?
Yes.
Thank you. Foley is absent right now, so I'll call on Kamei.
Yes.
Thank you. Kamei, yes. Jane?
Yes.
Jimenez? Jimenez is absent. Lee? Board Member Lee? Okay, absent. Lopez?
Aye.
Mahan? Mahan's absent. Torres? Torres is absent. Chavez?
Yes.
Burt?
Here.
Motion passed, Chair. Thank you.
Or yes. Okay. That moves us to item 1.3, which is the election of the board's leadership for calendar year 2024. As a reminder, the established rotation states that the 2024 board chair shall be selected from any representatives from the County Group 6, Santa Clara County, and the vice chair will be selected from groups 2 through 5, the Northwest, West Valley, South County, and Northeast. We'll conduct separate elections for the chairperson and vice chairperson. So first, we'll do the election of the chairperson, and we have received a letter of interest from Vice Chair Chavez, which is in our packet. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Well, first, I'd like to nominate the Vice Chair. Any other nominations from the floor? Okay, I don't see any. Can we have a motion and a second to close the nominations and elect the Vice Chair Chavez to be chair in 2024?
So moved. Second.
Great. And Elaine, can we do a roll call?
Yes, Chair. Blankley,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Dean is absent, so I'll call on Montano. Montano? Montano?
Yes.
Thank you. Foley's absent, so I'll call on Kamei.
Yes.
Thank you. Jane?
Yes.
Jimenez?
Yes.
Lee? Lopez?
Aye.
Mahan's absent. Torres is absent. Chavez?
Yes.
Burt?
Yes.
Motion passed, Chair.
Great. And before...
Thank you.
Yes,
It'll be
thank
fun.
you. And I'd just like to say, I think that we're really privileged to have somebody with Cindy's experience and insights and relationships regionally as we're going forward on these really important matters. And yeah, I think it's very fortunate for the board. All right. And then next, we will proceed with the vice chair. And we have received a letter of interest for vice chair from Director Lopez, which is in the packet. We also have endorsement letters that are included in the packet. They're also in the supplemental folder on the public binder, the back of the room. So may I have nominations for vice chair?
I'll nominate Sergio Lopez.
Second.
Great. Member Montano, did your lights on?
No, I was going to second that.
Okay, great. So then we need a motion. I don't see any other lights. Okay. We need a motion and a second to close nominations.
So moved. Second.
Okay. And Elaine, would you
Yes.
do the roll?
Yes, so this is the motion to close nominations and elect Sergio Lopez for vice chair. Blankley?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Dean is absent, so I'll call on Montano.
Yes.
Thank you. Foley's absent, I'll call on Kamei. Thank you. Jane?
Yes.
Jimenez?
Yes.
Lee? Otto Lee? Otto Lee is absent. Lopez?
Yes.
Thank you. Mahan absent. Torres?
Coming right up.
Yes? Vice chair elections. Thank you. Chavez?
Yes.
Burt?
Yes.
Motion passed, Chair. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll just say thank you to my colleagues, deeply appreciate it, and look forward to working with our soon-to-be chair and with all of you. Thank you.
Great. All right. So now we'll move on to item 2.1, which is a recognition for the following retirees. Van Ong, a senior financial analyst, 37 years of service. Anthony Royal, a bus dispatcher, 25 years of service. Jagdeep Singh, light rail four-person, 32 years of service. Brian McFarland, electromechanic, 31 years of service. Wow. Our retirees are unable to join us tonight, but on behalf of the board, I'd like to extend our deepest gratitude for their many years of dedication and public service. Their contributions have been invaluable, helping residents of Santa Clara County move. We wish them the best in their retirement. So that takes us to item 3, public comment. This is for members of the public to speak on any item within the purview of this body, but which is not otherwise on the agenda. Those who would like to address the board for matters not on the agenda, please submit your speaker cards or raise your hand in Zoom or press 9 on your phone. Speakers will have 1 minute to speak. As noted on the agenda, we will have up to 30 minutes for public comments, and those who might be unable to speak in the 30 minutes will have an opportunity at the end of the meeting under other items. The law does not permit the board to have action or extended discussion on any item not on the agenda except under special circumstances. Those with customer service concerns are encouraged to contact the Customer Service Department. Their contact information is on the screen. And I'd like to remind the members of the public who are speaking tonight to adhere to our rules when addressing the board. They're on the public speaker's timer slide. We'll now start public comment, and we have one card for a person here, Laura Uden. Welcome.
Thank you to the directors and the newly elected chair and vice chair. My firm was illegally substituted on a VTA project over 3 years ago. We lost millions of dollars. I asked for help at the time, but VTA did nothing. VTA finally initiated an investigation a year ago and concluded 8 months ago that regulations were broken when my firm was removed. Since then, the investigation has stalled with no communication about plans for its completion, final report, or any accountability for those involved. I've attended these board meetings for the past 6 months and have asked for your help each time. Vice Chair Chavez has attempted it, but so far VTA has done nothing to change the situation. I'm a disabled veteran who served my country overseas for 4 years. I follow the law and pay my taxes. I deserve to be treated according to regulations, and when I report an injustice, I deserve to have it addressed. I need this board to do its due diligence and govern the VTA, force them to communicate their plans to complete my investigation and identify corrective actions to resolve the damage done to my firm before it hurts others. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And do we have any public speakers remotely?
There are no hands raised.
All right, thank you. So we'll now close public comment for items not on the agenda and move on to item number 4, which is public hearings. And first one is 4.1, which is to conduct a hearing and adopt a resolution of necessity for one property for VTA's BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 project. The full staff recommendation is noted on the screen. Ron Gullum, Director of Real Estate and Transit-Oriented Development, and Kathy Bradley, Manager of Real Estate and Project Administration, will present this item. After the presentation, I'll open the public hearing, and property owners or their representatives will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Members of the public who'd like to address the board on the resolutions of necessity will be given a minute to speak. Welcome, Ron and Kathy.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, this resolution necessity hearing is for the BART Phase 2 project. Actually, before I go forward, I'll just note that this is an item that regards a tunnel easement for BART Phase 2. Before I start, I'd just like to note that the full administrative record for this hearing is contained in the board packet and the board memo and staff report. My comments here tonight are a highlight. So first, I'd just like to provide a very brief overview of the BART Phase 2 project. As you can see on the screen, the BART Phase 2 project is a 6-mile extension extending from the current Berryessa San Jose North BART station. It has a 5-mile tunnel and 1 mile of surface. It has 4 stations with support facilities as well as the New Hall maintenance facility. For this hearing, I'd just like to highlight the findings that are needed that the Board of Directors does need to make. The first is that the public interest and necessity require the project. Second, that the project is planned or located to be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. Third, that the property in the resolution is necessary for the project. And then fourth, an offer of just compensation has been made. And I'll note that the subject of compensation is not a topic for this resolution of necessity hearing. And with that, I'd like to turn over to Kathy to walk you through the particulars of the property.
Good evening. The property is B3318, and it's located near Stockton and Julian, and you'll see that marked in this map here. The property is located at 790 Lenzen Avenue, and it's a multifamily residential property that is owned by Lenzen Square Community Partners, LP. The total property is about 70,000 square feet in size, and the tunnel easement that we're seeking is 362 square feet, and it's for purposes of constructing, operating, and maintaining the tunnel. The offer was made on January 13th, 2023. This second map shows the location of the tunnel easement. It's that little red corner. And what I want to let you know is that we actually did come to a verbal agreement on the terms and price with the owner. However, since the verbal agreement was made, our efforts to obtain a signed purchase and sale agreement have been unsuccessful. Therefore, in order to maintain the project schedule, we are asking that this resolution of necessity be adopted tonight. As you know, we will continue to make efforts to negotiate and settle this prior to filing anything in court. This entity is a corporate entity with multiple layers, and we believe that the resolution of necessity will prompt their attention, and we will be able to settle. And therefore, this is the end of the presentation on this property.
Thank you. We'll now formally open the hearing for property ID B3318, owned by Lenzen Square Community Partners. The owner or the representatives are welcome to address the board at this time.
Chair, I did not receive any request to speak at the in-person location, so I'd like to just note, is there anybody here who'd like to speak?
Okay, thank
And
you.
there are no hands raised in Zoom either, Chair.
All right, any questions from colleagues? All right.
I have one.
oh.
Sorry.
Yes.
My mic,
Director Montano.
Yeah, I just want, so Lenzen, isn't that where the San Jose Unified School District is located? So I was just wondering if that's going to have any impacts at the school
The
district?
school district is a few parcels down the street from there, but it's not adjacent to this property. And the BART tunnel is not near or affecting any of the school district property.
Okay, and that includes the college that's near there for the
Correct.
students? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and, okay.
I would move approval for the staff's recommended actions for property B3318, owned by Lenzen Square Community Partners.
Second.
All right. Elaine, can you do a roll call vote?
Blankley,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Dean is absent, so I'll call on Montano.
Yes.
Thank you. Foley's absent, I'll call on Kamei.
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Jimenez,
Yes.
Lee,
Aye.
Board Member Lee.
Yeah, he said.
Yes.
We need to actually have your video on to comply with the Brown Act requirements on just cause. I'll come back to you. Also, that we need to note that there is, whether or not there is someone 18 years or older with you at the at your location. But I'll come back to you. Lopez.
Yes.
Thank you. Mahan. Mahan is absent. Torres. Yes. Chavez.
Yes.
Burt.
Yes.
And then I'll come back to Board Member Lee.
Yes. And I just want to mention, pursuant to the just cause provision, I would like to take this meeting by remote due to personal illness, and that there is nobody 18 over with me in my room at my location. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passed, Chair.
Thank you. All right, that lets us move on to 5.1, which is the Citizens Advisory Committee Chair Report. And Howard Miller is with us. Welcome.
All right. It's always an honor to be here, Chair Burt, and future Chair Chavez. I guess Chair-elect Chavez. Got my terminology right. We did meet on November 8th, and we had a very robust presentation by staff, spectacular presentation on the 2000 Measure A Transit Semi-Annual Report. A lot of interest from our committee as everybody's learning how the operation works here. You will find that tonight on your agenda item 6.13. We had a staff report on the 2016 Measure B biannual budget modification. Brief discussion, everybody was super happy. We voted unanimously in favor of that. That is your item 6.8 on your agenda. We also had a brief discussion amongst ourselves. We are getting ready to kick off the audit for fiscal year 2023 next month. Now, we're not starting the audit then, but we have a process to make sure that we have an auditor in place and a timeline of procedure and lay out the public hearings that we're going to have. So we're gearing up to start that early next year. And then my last announcement, which is more personal for me, this will be my last meeting with you because we change chairs every year, and I believe that that's an important part of keeping the organization healthy. So I have served my year as the chair, and at our next meeting, we will vote in a new chair. So I want to thank you guys. If anybody has questions, as always, I'm available. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you very much for serving as chair and for your many years of service to VTA.
Well, I'm still on the committee. So
and continuing service. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. That allows us to move on to 5.1B, which is the Policy Advisory Committee report. And Chair Rennie is with us. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, General Manager, board members. I'd like to extend my congratulations to our Chair-elect. I was a full board member when she was Chair last time and did an excellent job, so I know the coming year is going to be good. Congratulations to the Vice Chair-elect also. Policy Advisory Committee met on November 9th. We appointed a nominating committee to nominate our Chair and Vice Chair for next year, so there or to suggest an the appointments for that. So they are currently working on that. That's made up of Chua, Mekachek, Scazola, and Sell on our nominating committee. We also had an item where we overviewed the board's government enhancement guidelines for the city-county group appointment process to the VTA Board of Directors. For some of you may recall, this was one of the board governance improvements to give recommendations to how the cities appoint members to your board. We overviewed that. In addition, we also recommended approval of 6.8, as did the Citizens Advisory Committee that Chair Miller just mentioned. We also recommend VTA board members approve the reallocation of $1.7 million of the 2016 Measure B bike and ped capital projects from the Los Gatos-Winchester Boulevard project to our Kennedy Road sidewalk. We already got the Class 4 bike lanes into Winchester, but the next step is many, many millions of dollars. So instead of trying to wait for that to collect, we're consolidating money into another project, which we will be able to finish with the transfer of funds to that project. We also recommend the approval of several reports, the Congestion Management Program Monitoring Report and the 2000 Measure A Transit Improvement Program Report and the VTP Report. In addition, the Annual Transit Operations Performance Report. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work of your committee this year. So that allows us to move on to 5.1C and D, which are in the packet. And so on 5.1E, the VTA BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 Ad Hoc Steering Committee Chairperson Report. We had our first meeting of this committee on November 29th. After a vote by the committee, I'll serve as chairperson, and Mayor Mahan will serve as committee vice chair. The committee reviewed a draft committee charter and requested a few revisions that include a budget for the committee to be approved by the board, and increasing the membership to include no more than 3 non-voting ex officio committee members who would be recommended to the committee chair, and other minor modifications. The committee members may discuss subcommittee working groups and member assignments at a later meeting. This committee's 6-month work plan was approved with minor edits about action versus information items. And after a discussion on requested information to be included in the staff presentation, we scheduled for the next meeting of the BART Silicon Valley Project update. Staff's working on scheduling the next meeting, which will be in January, we believe January 19th. And we'll now take public comment on all items under committee reports.
I do not have any requests to speak at the in-person location.
There are no hands on Zoom.
Okay, and I'll just add that the BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 Subcommittee has a really aggressive work plan, and in particular the Auditor General, who is staffing the committee and bringing in supplemental domain experts to really build their capability. It's going to be a very serious, ongoing oversight of this extremely important project. So we'll be keeping you very posted. And one of the things that we discussed at G&A today was that next year, an intention to use workshops as the vehicle to regularly have a full review and discussion with the board on these items rather than try to fit them in to board meetings. So everybody's going to have a full dose of this next year. All right. Yes.
I also wanted to note for the record that public comment was received on the BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 Ad Hoc Steering Committee that has been posted on the agenda portal.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to 5.2, which is the General Manager's Report. Just a reminder to the public, we'll take public comment at the conclusion of all items under the GM report. Carolyn?
Thank you and good evening. I have some items to share with you for this month. First, I want to start with the Veterans Day Parade. I want to do a recap. That's one of our largest events VTA is involved in. It was on Saturday, November 11th, and 4 buses drove in the parade throughout the downtown. In one bus, we were privileged to carry the honor flight of veterans. VTA veterans and their families also walked in the parade along with union representatives from AFSCME, ATU, and TAEA. This day was a culmination of a labor of love from the operations, service management, safety and compliance, and the Veterans Day Committee. And I want to give a special thank you to VTA employees Susan Lacero, Rendeep Sangha, Val Sewal, Stanley Fong, James Becker, and Chris Aguilar. Without them, this event would not be possible. And as you saw, we gave out these coins as well to each of our veterans. That was I guess it created an exclusive challenge for the coin and pin to honor our military veterans along with any of our employees, so we were able to give these out. These challenge coins were distributed to all, as I mentioned, VTA veterans and symbolize our gratitude for their military service and are a token of our unity. We hope to continue to provide our veterans with support and encourage their participation in the future along with our board members. Next slide, please. The VTA has been very, very busy. The Communications Department hosted an internal holiday food drive fundraiser with the Second Harvest Food Bank and raised $9,300 over $9,300, thanks to all the VTA staff for their generous donations. A special thanks to VTA bus operator Danny Quintana for donating some of his amazing art where sales proceeds went directly to the food bank. HR analyst Brendan Hayes led 2 exercise classes that brought in more donations, and transit systems safety supervisor Antonio Tovar, who roasts his own coffee beans, set up a coffee tasting for donations. Thank you also to the JWI team for setting up a table to collect donations during the health fair, and to the Employee Advisory Committee for their support with these events. The fundraiser brought staff together as well as raised money for a good cause. VTA was the highest group of fundraisers, was among the highest group of fundraisers for the second harvest this year. Next slide, please. Our frontline workers continue to excel in their careers as 104 coach operator apprentices graduated from the Joint Workforce Investment Apprenticeship Program at Mission College. These operators received their Mission College certificates for successfully completing the 18-month apprenticeship. I would like to thank the California Transit Works, Robert Hannibal, and ATU International, Elacio Acosta Jr. for their continued support. I'd also like to thank VTA board member Sergio Lopez for attending and speaking at the graduation. And then on the 28th, 5 new light rail operators graduated from a 12-week training course. 4 of them were from outside the agency and are new to our agency, which is great, and we're welcomed to the VTA family. Our communications department is continuing trying to capture all these graduations, putting together videos for social media to celebrate our new operators. And you can check those out on our Instagram and Facebook pages. I invite the board, once again, to attend any of the upcoming graduations. And please let the board office or government affairs manager, Christine Stavum, to know, and they'll be able to provide you the information. Light rail rehab we're making quite a bit of progress on this. This is to ensure our rail system is in a state of good repair, as the current phase of rail rehabilitation was completed on November 16th. And the work included rehab and replacement of overhead power lines, concrete panels, special track work, switches, and concrete embedded rail. Our community outreach team got the word out to passengers with social media and other methods to help ensure all riders had a smooth commute with bus service, bridging the gap where light rail service was down. And I want to thank the construction and engineering staff who help support this out in the field. The next phase of work will begin in September 2024 with work on the overhead catenary system. The next slide is on the Capitol Light Rail Station Trans-Nordian Development Plan. On December 1st, we had a successful press conference to announce our partnership with Mid-Penn Housing to build affordable apartments next to the Capitol Light Rail Station. This is one of the 7 properties in the development pipeline of our Trans-Nordian Development Program right now. And I want to thank Vice Chair Cindy Chavez and Board Member Mayor Matt Mahan for being instrumental in helping bring this project to life. And Mid-Penn's President Matt Franklin called out VTA as being the most forward-thinking transportation agency in the Bay Area because of all the transit-oriented development projects we have going, and I think that's very high praise for our, particularly for our TOD team. For community events, we have a number of them going on. Our outreach team is always busy engaging with the riders and community members, and you're going to see some upcoming community meetings for Valley Transportation Plan 2050, along with the scheduled highway cleanup events. The most recent took place on November 11th, and there's another one coming up this weekend. Our board, once again, is encouraged to attend any of the events VTA holds. You can find more information on all outreach initiatives through the VTA's community outreach web page at vta.org/cope. And then I want to announce a couple more awards. Through all the hard work that's done by all the VTA staff, I'm proud to announce that we've been acknowledged with a few awards. The 101 Blossom Hill Interchange, I feel like I'm here every month talking about honors for that. But it was honored by the American Council of Engineering Companies as Transportation Project of the Year. This is the 5th award this project has received. And if you have not seen the project, it is absolutely beautiful, and you can see the bicycle pedestrian bridge as well. But it is a really nice project and has been honored, and deservedly so. Catalyze SV, which is a housing and environmental awareness group, honored multiple VTA initiatives. Our community engagement team won for their Ask VTA event about Trans-Nordian development, which took place in August. VTA's BART Silicon Valley team took home a placemaking award for the Milpitas Transit Center for bringing vibrancy to the community. And the Catalyzing Best Development Award went to our transit-oriented development team. And the Transit-Oriented Development Manager, Jesse O'Malley Solis, received honorable mention in the category of Government Champion. So congratulations to all the great work and for helping VTA shine. Okay, other one is just actually right here. The Stuff the Bus. I'd like to invite everyone to VTA's annual Stuff the Bus toy drive in partnership with the U.S. Marine Corps' Toys for Tots on Saturday, December 9th, this Saturday, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at San Jose's Christmas in the Park. Every year, we endeavor to stuff a 40-foot bus with new unwrapped toys for children in need, and I hope you'll help us spread that holiday cheer by coming down on Saturday and donating. And it is really a very nice event, a very fun day. One last item before I turn it over to Government Affairs is we have been part of the Monopoly San Jose edition. You haven't got to see it, there it is. So, on Monday, November 20th, VTA officially announced our bus and light rails will be took a place on the railroads. So we have 4 spots on the Monopoly board in one of the most iconic board games. This is a one-of-a-kind opportunity that will further expose VTA to Santa Clara County residents and especially to the younger generation of potential VTA riders. VTA has Monopoly-themed bus and light rail wraps that operate along our most popular routes, as well as a station takeover across from SAP Center. And I want to thank the marketing team and all their hard work for actually making that a memorable experience possible. We hope everyone will buy the game and play and enjoy it during the holidays. And before I go to Government Affairs, I just want to say, lastly, this is Ron Golem's last board meeting. He has been our real estate manager for many years, and I really want to thank him for being just a real driver in the transit-oriented development area, as well as leading us through a number of the right-of-way acquisitions we've needed to complete many of our transportation projects. So I want to thank Ron Golem. He will be retiring before the end of the year. And that's last week. Okay, and just the Government Affairs report, ridership, and safety and security statistics are in our online packet. And just lastly, I wish you all a happy and safe holiday season as we move into the new year. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on 5.2?
We do not have any requests to speak at the in-person location, and Thalia's going to call the person that's raised their hand in Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. Eugene, you may begin speaking when ready. Eugene?
Everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that. Good evening and happy holidays, VTA board members. Just a couple of quick questions as I commend VTA on their efforts to encourage ridership in Santa Clara County. I've heard rumors that part shortages have delayed the delivery of 92 new Gillig 40-foot low-floor buses to VTA. That is, those buses were to replace the 1,000 and 2,000 first-generation low-floor buses. Is this true that the part shortages have affected the delivery of these new buses? I would like a written response to this. Also, in addition to the need of hiring bus drivers, are you also looking for customer service representatives? Reason being is that it's taken almost over 10 days for VTA to respond to an inquiry, which indicates that more customer service people are needed. Please provide a response in writing. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
Thank you. Just a couple things. One, I wanted to just say to Ron, just congratulations and a very, very sincere thank you. We asked you to do something very difficult, and you did it in spite of everybody getting in your way, even those of us who asked you to do it. So thank you very, very much. And, I will say, colleagues, that the amount of feedback I get about the partnership that VTA has with its surrounding communities, especially as it relates to housing, is just, we get great, great feedback about working with you. And by the way, even when the developers feel like they should have gotten more out of you, which makes me feel good, that they think they should have gotten more out of you and that they still appreciate you. So thank you for all your work. If I could, I wanted to turn to the legislative update and talk just for a moment about the possibility of MTC bringing a regional measure for transit to the MTC board as soon as January. And tomorrow there's a meeting, a legislative meeting, and I'll let my colleague Margaret Abe-Koga talk a little bit about that. But I wanted to just share one thing with all of you, and that is that there was a poll that was already done. And there are a number of issues that are of concern to me, but one of them is that the legislative package is being pursued rather quickly, and I understand there's only been 2 meetings with all of our staffs in the 9 Bay Area counties to shape something that will become public in January. So I share that because I think VTA should make sure that in January we agendize the subject so that we can at least get a recommendation from staff over what are the most important benchmarks and issues that we want to make sure are prioritized. And at our Caltrain board meeting, we took an action regarding that today, which I think is really going to be helpful in terms of shaping the discussion. A big concern I have is that I don't know if any of you who aren't on MTC have even been approached about this issue, but I feel like it's so important that elected officials and communities across the 9 Bay Area counties should really be engaged before there's a final product that is put forward to the board. So if we agendize it, then we can take some shared action on it. But I would also recommend that your cities consider doing the same thing because, just to say this aloud, that of the 9 Bay Area counties, we are about 25% of the population, but we're 27% of the sales tax revenue that gets generated. And I don't know what that means relative to how much revenue will come back to the community. So although, and then let me just add one other thing. Our highest obligation is to make sure people can use public transit. And I think that what we should be doing is really focusing on the things we most want to see. Schedules that are coordinated, one ticket, one fare, wayfinding, and that it's safe and clean and reliable, right? Like, I think they're adding a lot of other things that really concern me that could impact, rail companies across the 9 Bay Area counties. So if we could agendize that, I would really appreciate it. And then if you don't mind, Chair, I'd love to just turn it over to Margaret.
Great.
Thank you, Director Chavez, and thank you, Chair. Yes, so tomorrow there is an MTC committee meeting that will be discussing or going over the survey results of a recent poll that was conducted on a potential regional measure. And there's a number of concerns that are presenting in the survey results. I think the most that you may have heard of is this issue of consolidation of agencies, in particular Caltrain and BART is most pertinent, I believe, to our area. So I appreciate Commissioner Director Chavez bringing this up. I don't serve on these Friday committees. Commissioner, I keep calling Director Chavez and I serve on these committees that are held on Wednesdays, and it's actually Mayor Mahan who's on the Friday meetings. And so I was actually caught off guard. I didn't realize this was coming to the commission, and that's a concern of mine. I think that these are some big issues and critical issues that should be discussed as a commission as a whole and in more depth. And the staff has said that they will bring this to the full commission later this month and again in January. But I was just looking for VTA's sense and thoughts and direction on how we should proceed and as we move along this idea of a measure and what are our concerns, what are our asks. So if we could have this conversation, discussion, and lay out some direction for us, the delegation, I think that would be very, very helpful. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Both, I guess, Chair-elect Chavez and Board Member Abacoga. This month I did speak at Senator Wiener's, here, it was a Senate Transportation? And Jim knows.
It was a select committee on.
Yeah, it was a select
transportation.
committee to hear about the regional measures. So Senator Cortese was there from our area. Senator Becker was there as well for a little while. And so each of the transit agencies did speak. Our focus is a little different than the other agencies. I'm going to just ask Jim to remind everybody what this regional measure is, because what MTC is looking for is primarily a regional measure they can put on the ballot for at least 5, with at least 5 counties participating.
We've been following this closely, and certainly appreciate the attention that our commissioners, Margaret, Cindy, and Matt have been putting into this. This is a very difficult dance that we have to take, because the argument that's been made by our colleagues, particularly San Francisco and BART, are that they are facing a fiscal cliff which will cause them to either cut service drastically or in some cases end service altogether. We don't face the same fiscal cliff. We are relatively sound. That's not to say things can't go wrong, but while we're in the process of looking to the FTA for a full funding grant agreement, we need to be in a strong enough physical position to show them that not only can we run an extension, but we can also run the service that we're required to provide to the taxpayers of Santa Clara County. So our approach, led by Carolyn in her presentation at the Select Committee, was that additional operating expenditures to keep us on a level, on a per capita level with our colleagues, would be the most valuable for us. I will tell you that my personal opinion is that a 5 or 9 county or whatever it turns out to be approach is probably going to have a very, very difficult time reaching a 2/3 majority. I think a discussion of this at our next meeting will be incredibly valuable for staff, and I would ask you just to keep in the back of your minds that we have several sales taxes that we currently enjoy that are coming up on their expiration dates. And a plan that we might formulate would be much better along the lines of renewing those kind of approaches rather than trying to add additional sales tax to the residents of Santa Clara County. And I think more discussion in January, but just some food for thought.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to follow up on the Vice Chair's comments about this related aspect of MTC and BART beginning to raise a prospect of a merger of BART and Caltrain. And just so everybody's clear, this is not only not at the initiative of Caltrain, Caltrain was not even informed of this consideration, nor informed that MTC was polling on this. And it became public. Today at the Caltrain board meeting, we adopted a letter with certain positions on this, to be clear, that any consideration of that kind of consolidation would need to have Caltrain's full endorsement, and rather that what we do support is the continued effort at fare consolidation, on service consolidation, and other related matters where the agencies of the region will collaborate to improve the service for all of the users of the systems. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on Caltrain's position. Oh, and I will add that we have had support on Caltrain's position quickly come forward from a whole series of state legislators up and down the peninsula and into our county. Margaret?
Thank you. If I can add to, this is coming up, I believe, tomorrow because there needs to be state legislation that would enable a regional measure to happen. And so that's the first step. And then we would go into the actual measure. I agree with Mr. Lawson. In my time on the MTC, there have been several examples where we've been the donor county and not receiving or having to fight for funding that really is, ours, rightfully ours. And so I think that is really a concern and something that we should discuss is what is in the best interest of Santa Clara County and VTA. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that concludes 5.2. Oh, Member Blankley.
Yeah, that's okay. Maybe my question was just answered. It has to do with timing, because Director Chavez was suggesting, getting city councils involved. I'm aware of this only to the extent of what Jim Lawson has shared with me, and I have shared with my council that this is brewing, but that's all I've been able to say. So my question is just to confirm, when would I possibly have something to even bring to my city council? Because all we know right now is it's brewing. There's nothing there. So possibly what I just heard is this is at least a couple of months out before I need to work. We need advance notice, right, to get something on our agenda. So do you have a suggestion as to when that might be?
May I make a suggestion? Murray, if I may, I think after tomorrow, we will have a much better idea of the path that MTC is recommending and be in a position as staff to recommend to you a potential approach. And I would be happy to discuss that with you early next week.
Thank you.
And of course, you realize, because it'll be a multi-step process, as Margaret has rightly pointed out, they need enabling legislation to do this. And so even if they get that, they still need to get your city's endorsement before an election, whether it's in 26 or 28 or whenever. So we have a little bit of time on that side as well.
All right. Thank you.
If I could,
If I may, just, can you also add other cities? Because we're in the same.
well, that's actually what
boat.
I was
great.
gonna.
Thank you.
Yeah, what I was actually gonna suggest is, if a write-up, if VTA could just do a write-up of an assessment and then include the staff report that goes to MTC to all of the councils with a request for some feedback. I just want to share one thing that I'm concerned about. In the past, there has been, when state legislation has been designed, it's got a, it gives the cities and counties an opportunity to opt in, meaning that they'll say, in order for this to get put on the ballot, it's got to be voted on by all the counties or some number of cities. That is not the approach that I believe MTC is planning on. So the point that Jim just raised, and I think it's really important that Mayor Blankley just raises up, is that if we're not part of shaping it, and we're not going to have and if the primary body that will vote to put it on the ballot is MTC, then what that means is a whole lot of communities, the 101 cities in the 9 Area counties will be kind of passed up. So I think it is important that we get something to MTC in January, February timeframe, because I think if we don't, then the absence of comments, I think, is sort of seen as everybody's okay with it, and I think we just have to be really clear that we want to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on to item 5.3, which is the chairperson's report. And I just wanted to kind of offer a summary of some things this last year which this board and organization really, I think, should be proud of their accomplishments. And so one is, as Carolyn mentioned earlier, we have 7 transit-oriented development projects in the works, including affordable housing projects. And that is a really big and significant movement, and really the most that this organization's ever done by far. Yeah. And second, we this year continued our commitment on equity and inclusion by hiring a DEI manager. We also opened up the public transit connection to Monterey and San Benito counties. And one of the things that we talk about in our regional role is we're an agency that is not only connected to MTC in the Bay Area, but we're connected south of here to Monterey and San Benito counties. And this initiative really strengthens that commute route and transit relationship with those neighboring counties. We also introduced the Guaranteed Ride Home program to help encourage folks to use transit. We approved the transitional housing project at Cerrone, which I think was a great collaboration with the city of San Jose. We worked through issues, and a great collaboration with our staff who worked through the issues as well, and I think we should all be pleased with the outcome that is occurring there. We also received additional funding for the East Ridge BART Regional Connector, and then more importantly to some people than others perhaps, we set all records with the Taylor Swift concert on transit use. And then we have our new service plan for 2024 that we have adopted, and we also adopted the bike superhighway plan. And then, as we spoke about earlier, we have now launched the BART Phase 2 Ad Hoc Oversight Steering Committee, which is going to be a lot of our work going forward. And then we open a new customer service center. So that's really a good set of accomplishments this year that I not only want to thank the board for everything they've done on this, all the staff who supports us as a board and leads on these initiatives, and then all of our VTA staff who work every day to provide valuable transit service to the 2 million people of our county, and all those staff who are just dedicated to providing that service as best they're able. So I want to say it's been a real pleasure this year working with this board. We had a lot of new board members, and I think we've really coalesced well, and that I really appreciate the commitment that everybody has had in the board, and will continue to do so. So thanks again. All right, that takes us to the consent calendar.
Chair, if I may.
Oh, sorry. Comments?
Yes, we have no public comment request for the in-person location, and Thalia will call the person who's raised their hand.
Yes. Eugene, you may begin speaking when ready.
Yes.
Evening once again, board members and staff. Eugene Bradley, Silicon Valley Transit users. I want to commend VTA for extending the agreement with its partners for the Highway 17 bus service. But I used to take that bus when I was living in Santa Cruz from 2004 to about 2017. I'm happy to still use that bus on occasion to travel between Monterey Bay and San Jose. One thing that VTA and its partners ought to consider is to have the bus extended down to Watsonville. So, otherwise, I commend VTA for the efforts it continues to make to improve and increase ridership in Santa Clara County. Keep up the good work, please. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to the consent calendar, item 6. Just a couple notes. Item 6.6 was deferred, and also under item 6.17 to 6.18, the G&A committee this afternoon recommended that one additional option year would be extended for the MGO contract. And any members of the public who'd like to speak to on this item, please raise your hand now or submit a card. And colleagues, is there any interest in pulling any items off of consent?
I would move approval of the consent calendar. Chavez.
Okay.
I just wanted to note for the record, Chair, that there are no requests to speak at the in-person location and no hands raised in Zoom for items on the consent agenda. Thanks.
Great.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Okay, and any abstentions or recusals? All right. So now, can the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, this is for the consent agenda. Again, this is items 6.1 through 6.5 and items 6.7 through 6.23. Blankley.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Dean is not here, so I'll call on Montano.
Yes.
Thank you. Foley's not here. I'll call on Kamei.
Yes.
Thank you. Jane.
Yes.
Jimenez.
Yes.
Otto Lee.
Aye.
Thank you. Lopez.
Yes.
Mahan. Mahan's absent. Torres. Yes. Torres, yes. Chavez.
Yes.
Burt.
Yes.
Motion passed, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to our regular agenda. 7.1 is an information item on the FY23 year-end financial status. Greg Richardson, our Assistant General Manager and CFO, will provide a brief report. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and the rest of the board members. Just as we begin this conversation, just a couple of items for context to sort of preface the discussion for tonight. So first of all, back in September, October of this year, both the A&F Committee and the board received our standard quarterly revenue and expense report, which included the annual performance for fiscal year 23. Today, as a result of the annual audit recently concluding, this body has received the annual comprehensive financial report as part of the consent agenda, which you just passed. And so with this finalization of fiscal year 23, we wanted to have basically just one final review of the financial performance, and you're going to see it in sort of a different view than what you've historically seen. And so we'll talk through a little bit about that. And then lastly, what I want to make sure is understood for this body is, you know, the focus historically when we've presented financial information, especially revenues and expenses, it's been on the VTA transit operations. And so starting with our second quarter reporting, we will revise that approach to ensure that we provide more insight into the various funds within VTA to ensure visibility for this body. So, first on some key takeaways. Although I have this listed as the last point on this slide, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our Assistant Controller, Grace Ragney. I hope she is still in the audience. If she is, Grace, please hold your hand up so people can see you. She said she was going to be here. She said she was going to be here. All right. I just want to thank her and really the entire team. I mean, we look at this audit as a point in time. Everyone gets together, they try to go through the audit, and they produce this report. But really what it takes is effort throughout the entire year to make sure that the effort is clean, that the audit is clean, and the work that she and her team does is absolutely phenomenal. I also like to extend my appreciation to the Eide Bailey team for the work that they do. Fundamentally, the results of the audit for this year, clean or unmodified opinion. That's a good check. No significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, another good check. And then no adjustments to the financial statements, another good check. You know, and as I mentioned before, although during the year we primarily focus on the VTA Transit Operations side of the house, or VTA Transit Fund, the ACFR, as it's the acronym sort of describes, provides reporting on the various funds within VTA. And each of these are classified based on the structure of the fund following the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, and the guidance. So what you have on the screen now is the various types of funds and then the individual funds within VTA that are in there. So proprietary funds, I like to call these analogous to more business-type activities. Fundamentally, user fees and sales tax are their primary sources of revenue. And to geek out a little bit, it's a full accrual basis of accounting. So we won't get into a whole bunch of that, but that's something to remember as we go through this. The governmental funds for VTA, these are basically the special revenue funds, and we'll talk a little bit about those, or you'll see some of those as we go through. Specific taxes or revenues designated for particular use, and their basis of accounting is modified accrual. And then the fiduciary funds, as listed on this page, basically assets held by VTA as a trustee. They're not part of our consolidated financial statements, but they do have separate audits or reports that are provided for each. So in the CAFR, as expected, it's plenty of information for your reading pleasure at some other later date. I'm sure you'll enjoy. But some of the highlights that I thought we would just put in front of this body here are on the screen today. So overall, cash and investment balance for VTA is approximately $2.3 billion at year end. The major funds and their respective balances are shown on this particular slide as well. These four funds, the VTA Transit, the 2016 Measure B, the BART Operating, and the 2000 Measure A, comprise about $2.1 billion of that cash and investment balance of the $2.3 billion. Another key item that is important for us is the reserves, and I like to note on these that these are cash-funded reserves. And these are also effectively board-mandated reserves that we follow. So number one, on the operating reserve, the balance at the end of year was $90.6 million, which is within the 15% authorized or required limit that's related to the budgeted operating expense for fiscal year '24. The sales tax stabilization held at $35 million, and the debt reduction fund is now at $375 million. And just a couple of notes here. Just remember, as we went through the budget process, so in fiscal year '24, we'll move $100 million from that debt reduction fund into the transit capital fund, and then anticipate some of the operating surplus from fiscal year '23 will also be added to that transit capital fund. And then in the ACFR, the back section of it, there's a statistical section which reports on various operating, financial, demographic, and economic data points. And one of the items is on ridership. And so what you'll see here is ridership for fiscal year '23 came in at a little over 23.4 million passengers. This is 34% above fiscal year '22, and it sits at about 66% of where we were in fiscal year '19, which is the point of reference related to the pandemic. Broken down by bus and light rail, bus is about 19.3 million passengers, 27.4% increase over last year, and they're about 71.3% of fiscal year '19. And light rail at 4.1 million passengers, increase of nearly 80%, with 49.1% of fiscal year 2019. All right, now we get into some of the fun. All right, so one of the items that's in the ACFR, and we figured this was the best way to sort of reflect some of the performance for fiscal year '23 to the board, is in the change in net position. And so, although I'm not intending to go through these next couple of slides line by line, we did want to provide some sort of a comparable view of each of the funds' performance regarding that net position. Net position effectively being revenues less expenses for fiscal year '23. And this comparison is utilizing what I referred to before as the full accrual basis for accounting. So this first slide reflects the proprietary funds or the business type funds, with VTA Transit really being the predominant activity that you'll see in this particular grouping. I will ask you to note, just kind of put it in your mind, on the VTA Transit, the change in net position at $11.6 million. I just want you to kind of keep that in your mind as we go through some of these items. And again, not necessarily wanting to go through each of these, but just as a reference point for you to see each of the different funds that actually are part of our portfolio and where they were from the fiscal year end. The next page, again, the next group of funds is more on the governmental funds. This slide, it really more focused on the predominant item in here from a performance perspective is sales tax being the main item that's driving some of the revenue there. More prominent in this group under expenses is the transfer out, and this reflects contributions or allocations of those particular funding sources to other funds within VTA. An example of that would be on Measure A, in their total balance of $308 million transfer. Some of that is actually the transfer that goes to VTA Transit Operations, so that's where the transfer out will be on that particular line item. And again, not meaning to go through each of these, but just gives you a snapshot of where each of these funds are as it relates to net position. And then one of the items, and this was one attempt to sort of show an aggregate view, because that question has been asked in the past about just all the different revenue sources and where things flow within the agency. We'll have a later discussion when we talk about the different sources of funds, but this at least identified the funds themselves. And so when you aggregate both the business funds, the business type funds and the governmental funds, you get a total VTA picture. Again, not a picture that we normally go through on a quarterly basis. One item of note, just to kind of reiterate what I call the cross dependency of the various funds, you'll notice the transfers in on the revenue side matches the transfers out on the expense side. That's a good thing because those two things need to match, but it's basically referencing that certain monies that come through one fund are actually being transferred to another fund in the aggregate of almost $340 million. Now this is one, and again, keep that 11.6 in your mind. This is one where I wanted this body to understand, because on a quarterly basis, this particular slide is really meant to provide you a crosswalk from the historical revenue and expense reporting that the A&F committee and the board usually sees on a quarterly basis for VTA Transit with the net position reported, which is required in our financial reporting in the ACT for VTA. So the left half of the page reflects the line item categories for our quarterly reporting with comparisons to actual performance, which is comparable to what you've seen on a quarterly basis, along with the final budget is approved by the board and the original budget that was presented back in fiscal year 21. So that's the three columns showing there. And the subtlety in this reporting is, as mentioned before, VTA Transit, from an ACFR perspective, is a proprietary fund and therefore is a full accrual. Budgets, fundamentally, are prepared on a modified accrual basis. And so every quarter when we present to you the performance for VTA Transit Operations, we're actually showing you a modified accrual of the VTA Transit to make that comparison to the budget. And so for operating purposes, when you look at this particular slide, we reflect a surplus of almost $45.2 million compared to the final budget, which was a deficit of $4.1 million. Very favorable performance for the fiscal year, and one that we're actually very proud of. The right side of this slide provides the reconciliation between the results of operations with the ACFR required financial reporting. So now what I'm trying to do is get you from what you've seen on a quarterly basis to what you just saw when I reflected the $11.6 million balance. So this reflects transactions, and what it does is it reflects transactions that ensure that we report the VTA Transit on a full accrual. And again, you'll recall I asked you to remember the 11.6, and so this is basically reconciling you back from the 45.1 to the 11.6. And if I can just use two examples on this, just to give you context. I know this is exciting stuff, so stay with me. So bond payments. So bond payments, when we reflect our performance on a quarterly basis, when you look at debt service, we've included bond payments in that. From a financial reporting perspective, on full accrual, the bond payment itself doesn't flow through the income statement. So therefore, we're adding it back to the $45.1 million, just context. The other one that's large on this particular item is depreciation. On an operating basis, when we report to you on a quarterly basis, we don't include depreciation because it's more on a modified accrual and it's almost like a cash basis. So the asset's already been acquired and we don't include it as expense anymore. So the depreciation related to it is not necessary for us to show you on the operating performance. But from a full accrual perspective, we're required to show that. So when you kind of think about the different things that go on through the annual process, those are two key items when you make this comparison of why we can go from $45 million in one case to $11 million in the other. Bottom line is, it was great performance for the fiscal year, great performance for the agency. It's just a matter of how we report it from both an operating perspective and then from a pure financial statement perspective. And if you're still with me, the last page is really just a quick snapshot of where we are with our particular pension funds and our other post-employment benefits, which is OPEB, and those particular plans. So with ATU pension at 72.52% of funding, basically remains consistent with what our previous year was, which was at 72.58%. CalPERS, if you'll notice on CalPERS, their measurement date is 1 year lagging from what we produce for both the ATU pension and OPEB. And that lag, because of that lag, their prior year was about 84.7% of funding, where this year it's about 72%. That's not inconsistent with us. When we reported last year, we actually went from 83.3% to 72.58%. So it's just that 1 year lag that is causing some of that difference. And then overall, OPEB remains overfunded, and I did say overfunded at 130.19%. So with that, that does conclude my amazing presentation of information that I know you're excited to get. But I'm happy to take any questions or write them down and get back to you at a later date.
Thank you, Greg. Let's first see if we have any members of the public who would like to speak.
I do not have any requests to speak at the in-person location, and there are no hands raised in Zoom.
Okay. Any questions for Greg from colleagues? Vice Chair.
One, I would just say thank you for all the information. It was a lot to digest, truthfully, and I didn't get a chance to get to every detail I would have been curious about. I had a best practice question as it relates to organizations like ours, especially where you have such significant shifts in staffing. And there's two parts. There are the people that are full-time staff, and then there are the just volume of consultants that we're hiring for, BART or light rail or that kind of thing. And I was wondering, is there a best practice for transit agencies over determining under what terms and conditions a position becomes a permanent position versus when we contract out?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in most cases, when you have an opportunity for work that's going to be relatively short-term in nature or project-based, you'll most likely look to see if there's a possibility for that to be funded through or to be brought in from a consulting perspective, depending on the project itself and depending on the type of work. And then the question will sometimes come into overall cost. Again, you're dealing with the opportunity to bring somebody in. Can you actually bring them in the range of pay that you're provided from an agency perspective? And if you can't, but it's short term, but you need certain work done, then the consulting effort is usually the better approach to take, if that answers your question.
So, yeah, and so we have in the past, if we feel like we have someone for a fairly long term, we can make them a project employee, which makes them a VT. We can go off for a project employee, which means they understand that once the project ends, that their job may go away. In most cases, oftentimes when we have project employees, I've seen them as short as 3 years, and I've seen them as long as, for a substantial amount of time, like 10 years or so, depending on the project. Other times it's based on, skill set. If the skill set we don't normally use and is specific for a project for a small period of time, then we normally wouldn't hire. But we are starting to look at those longer term, particularly with BART right now. We're going to have people who are going to be here longer term for a period of time. And so the question for some roles, like community engagement and those types of things, that we will be looking at whether we bring in employees to have those roles. They may be as project employees. The only problem with the project employees is that they don't have the seniority level depending on what labor organization they're in, which union they're in. So depending on what happens there. So I think those are the things. We try to balance it out as to whether we bring in a consultant or a contractor. Really, I think we'll talk about this at the BART, on the next item for BART, but we are particularly looking on staffing up with VTA employees at a level that we didn't for the first phase.
So there are a couple of reasons I'm asking the question, and one is that, and we maybe have a policy already internally that you're using. I just haven't seen it, so I would love to know, like, what do we consider long-term versus short-term? You know, I think that would be helpful. So if that could just be sent to the board off agenda. The second reason I'm asking the question is that because of just how unpredictable I think our financial situation is going to be over the next few years, and I'm mindful that the state's made a big announcement about how, what their deficit is going to be like. I know the county's worried about a deficit. So the other thing I'm wondering is whether or not, again, it's a best practice to for the board to understand not just the budget for today, but how positions get created and then filled, and what are the long-term implications of that. And one challenge that I've had being a board member is that I've never seen us present, this is how we're going to grow over X period of time. Here are what the implications and impacts of that are. And there doesn't seem to be a public way of looking at our hiring.
If I could just tag onto that. So as all of us have seen, and we've presented what we would call a very basic approach to a 10-year financial forecast. Actually, with the addition of Jaden Sanga, who's the controller now, Deputy Director Controller, one of his tasks right now is to identify an ability for us to bring on a financial planning tool that allows us to do exactly what you're talking about. So when we have these conversations about adding headcount or doing whatever, it's not just trying to make that decision for year 1 or year 2, but it's looking to see what the impact is for 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years. And so we're bringing that tool in, and that will help us along with the whole financial fiscal sustainability sort of conversation, all of those things. It'll help us to provide a little bit greater transparency to this board, but also provide a little bit more of the variables that might exist, scenarios that we can play with, just so that there's an understanding of decisions that are being made and the impacts they can have downstream.
I think one thing I would really like the staff to consider is a process by which, prior to positions being hired, that there's a way for the board to, at least them to be, the positions to be sunshined. Because what I'm worried about is that I'm worried that we're looking, even when we look at a biannual budget, which I appreciate that we do that because I think that's really critical, I don't think it's enough sunshine to understand the implications of actions being taken within a particular fiscal year in the long term. So I understand the point you're raising about the tool. I think that would be helpful, but I also think there should be a process by which, if you're going to add Y number of positions or even particular types of positions, that's sunshined along with what the pay bandwidths are for them. Now, let me just say what I'm not trying to do. I'm not trying to restrict the staff. I do think that's more important for transparency. And the other thing is, I think there are some positions that that the staff needs the flexibility to bring somebody in who may have a very, very specialized expertise. And I recognize it, especially just looking across the country at the costs of construction across the industry, that people are fighting for engineers and the whole soup to nuts. And so, but just understanding that too, because I think there's a level of volatility that will continue to impact us for a number of years. So anyway, I'd love your thinking about that. I don't need an answer today,
No,
but
that's fine. Yep.
just to get your feedback on that.
Yep, noted.
Thank you.
All right.
Chair, I had
Yes, Director Lopez.
Thank you, Greg. I, too, was very excited to dive into these numbers, so I always appreciate it. Actually, I appreciate having this up here because I had a question about this last slide, and maybe I'll approach it in a couple different ways. One is that I'd be interested in following up and hearing if we have any, whether it's come from the board in the past or whether it's come from staff. What our kind of philosophy is around what our objectives are with funding pension and other benefit obligations. It may be great or that OPEB is at that number, but on the other hand, maybe we don't need as much of a buffer. But whatever the answer is, I'd just be interested in having that conversation, seeing what we're following as guidance, and particularly for diving into some of the others. I think in line with the previous discussion points, the fact that we will probably be seeing some volatility and just the direction of how the CalPERS fund itself is doing. I think that the second piece that I'll say is I think it would be appropriate at some point to come back to the board for a discussion around what our appetite is for risk portfolio, any other best practices, what our objectives are, and laying that out so that we can control the factors that we can control in the face of upcoming uncertainty and fulfill our obligations to our employees. So I think that'd be helpful, maybe just on a personal or circulating the board, maybe what that language is as it's existing, and then considering bringing that back later in the year for a fuller discussion. Thank you.
Will do.
Great. Point well taken. Thanks. All right. Now I think that concludes this item. Unless anybody else? Okay. Yes. Item 7.2 is the last item on the regular agenda. It's a report on our Silicon Valley Rapid Transit, or SVRT program. And Tom McGuire, our Chief of Capital Mega Projects Delivery Officer, will provide a brief report. Welcome.
Okay, just want to give a quick, most of you are probably looking at who's this man who's sitting in the dais next to Jim now. So I want to introduce Tom McGuire. He joined VTA last month as the Chief Mega Projects Officer. In his role, Tom will oversee every aspect of administering the BART project, including securing the federal funding, finalizing the design, executing and awarding the future contracts, overall direction of the VTA staff, consultant teams and contractors, coordination with BART, the budget and schedule, project controls, and serve as the key project representative to the VTA board, stakeholders, and community. And many times you've seen over the last year, Gary Griggs here. He's actually going to be resigning. He's been here for a number of months, 15 months, brought us through a period of a year really digging into what was going on during the inflation of the construction costs and really looking at the project and how do we manage it. And I want to thank him for all his service, but he is leaving the agency to pursue another opportunity at the end of the year. So I'm happy that we were able to have Tom come on board. He comes from San Francisco Metropolitan Transportation Authority, where he served since 2014. There he was engaged with the San Francisco's two largest transit projects, the Central Subway, connecting the South of Market neighborhood, Union Square and Chinatown, and the Van Ness Bus Rapid Transit. Additionally, Tom also oversaw staff that operate, engineer, design, and plan the city's traffic, parking, pedestrian, and bicycle infrastructure, and provide transit security and parking enforcement. And prior to SFMTA, he served as the Assistant Commissioner of the New York City Department of Transportation, managing bus rapid transit, sustainability, and resiliency programs, among many others. And so, Tom, if you want to give a little more background about yourself before you get into your report, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, directors. I think that was a pretty thorough background, so I'm not going to expand on that any more than to say that I'm really excited to be here before you today and to be here in this role as the Chief Mega Projects Officer. It's my job to make sure that BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 happens on time and on the budget that we've shared with you this fall. This is a project that it's a multi-generational investment. It's a commitment that everybody who works at the VTA has bought into, the commitment that we made to the voters and taxpayers and residents of Santa Clara County to get BART all the way to San Jose, through downtown San Jose to Diridon and out to Santa Clara. And I'm really excited to take on that challenge. I see my role here at the VTA as having three important parts, and I think in each of these ways I'm going to be interacting with you as board members. The first is to ensure that by this time next year, we have received from the Federal Transit Administration our full funding grant agreement. I think many of you remember the presentation that Gary Griggs and Greg gave showing that pie chart. About 50% of that pie chart needs to come from the federal government, and this is the year. 2024 is the make or break year for us to make sure we get that funding. I'll certainly be talking to each of you about ways in which we can, you as policymakers and leaders here in Santa Clara County can help us with that effort. The second piece is to improve the alignment we have with our contractors. We're building the biggest project in the history of the VTA, one of the biggest public works projects in the transit industry in United States history. And it's really important that our contractors have the right incentives, that they share risk with us, that we in the public sector are not taking on all the risk, but that we're also not asking our private sector partners to do things that are financially or physically impossible. The unique power of the progressive design build model that we've entered into the construction contract with Kiewit Shea Trailer allows us to share that risk, allows us to align those incentives, but it's my job to make sure that that's taking place at the highest level. And it's happening in a way that keeps the project on schedule. And the last thing is to establish or maybe reestablish a culture of better transparency, of collaboration, and openness with you as policymakers, as well as within the staff itself. The BART Silicon Valley is a huge undertaking from a project management point of view. There are hundreds of people, VTA employees, contractors, construction workers who are going to be working in the offices and at the many construction sites around the county over the next decade. It is my job to make sure that they are working together collaboratively, respectfully, not in silos, and that, just as importantly, I'm bringing you the information you need to make really important decisions about the project's finances and moving forward. So that's what you can expect from me over the next couple of years, and especially in this very important year ahead in 2024. If I could have the next slide, please. Oh, I've got it right here. I've got the power. Oops. There we go. So I said this is a make or break year. It's really important that we demonstrate to the federal government that we have the ability to deliver this project responsibly, and just as importantly, that this project has the support and is a top priority for all of you as policymakers. This schedule on the screen here shows what we'll be up to in the next year. The schedule starts with news that you've already seen. This is the independent cost estimate that our team put together and brought to you in October. That was with the best information we had at the beginning of this fiscal year, July 2023. We put together that number, and we know now that it adds up to $12.2 billion. And I know there have been some questions about how that number's changed over time. A very important accountability check that's coming up for us is going to take place starting on January 16th, when the Federal Transit Administration's Project Management Oversight Team will be here on site in San Jose for 3 days, working through with my team, beating up that cost estimate, looking for opportunities to refine it, identifying risks that maybe we've missed, just kind of blowing the doors off the transparency and making sure that they can recommend a number back to us and give us their final cost estimate for the project. That'll be a very important moment that we will share together this spring. Are we still at 12.2? Are we a little higher? Are we a little lower? Hopefully we're not a little higher. But again, we'll do that in as open a way as possible. And that's so important because that number is going to drive, that number is fixed, that will drive the decision the federal government makes at the FTA headquarters level about what level to fund this project at. That's the full funding grant agreement. And we need to get that number right. We'll continue throughout 2024. I'm not going to narrate every single point on this chart because I know it's a little late, but we'll continue to be passing documents, again, opening up our books and making sure the FTA's got everything they need so they can make a decision at the end of this calendar year. That's our goal. It's very aggressive, but at the end of this calendar year, whether to extend to us that full funding grant agreement. And that's the point at which we'll know we've made it through this critical year and that we've got a fully funded project that we're ready to move forward with. Looking forward to working with each of you. It's going to be a challenging year, but in addition to your role in holding me and my team accountable, there's also a role that I'm going to ask at times. Carolyn and I will both be asking you for your help again in making the case to those federal partners. This is the top transit priority for Santa Clara County. Our voters have been demanding this for 2.5 decades. We're here to finish the rail ring around the bay. And there are things that you could say as policymakers and elected officials that maybe carry a little more weight than the voice of us as public employees. So I look forward to having those conversations with you too. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now take public comment on this item.
We do not have any requests to speak at the in-person location, and Thalia will call the folks that have their hands raised in Zoom.
There are 2 hands raised. Blair, you may begin speaking, followed by Gerald.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Hopefully you can hear me. Happy December to everyone. Happy meeting. Really nice item on this. Thank you for the words of the presenter, who really wants to be developing ideas of accountability. Good luck in creating accountability with the public as well for this process. When you decided to lay the tracks side by side in the past few years instead of on top of each other, that was an important shift, an important change in my mind, that you guys were taking things more seriously and considering safety. And that, to me, really signaled that you're trying to develop better accountable practices. Good luck in those efforts. Good luck to being open with the public about this process. When will you start digging exactly? Questions like that. To make it clear along the way, it doesn't have to be fearful. Learn to build that openly and with trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. Gerald, you may begin speaking when ready.
Yes, this is Gerald Coffin. I'm the president of Batwig. We have sent you a couple of papers, and I'm not going to get into that because you've seen them and probably get into it at the steering committee meeting, but just 2 thoughts. First, we do agree, of course, that there ought to be a subway through downtown San Jose. We've had some questions about the configuration of that, but there's 2 conclusions that we came to. One is there really ought to be a side-by-side cost comparison between the twin bore and the 54-foot diameter single bore. And secondly, we question whether or not it's necessary to go out with the purchase of the TBM, the 54-foot TBN at this time. Could it wait a couple of months? I mean, is it really that serious? Why the rush? So I only have a minute, so I will turn off here. Thank you.
Thank you. So
that concludes public comment.
All righty. So any questions from colleagues? Director Jane.
Thank you, Tom. I know you've only been here a month, and it's a mega project. I went to a webinar, Transit Costs. It's out of NYU. You and I spoke about it. It's, they rate like 700 mega projects around the world. And one of the things that they said was that what really sort of derails a lot of these projects is having too many contractors. And can you talk about, where we are with contractors? They were talking about contractors overseeing contractors. And can you just talk about your philosophy there? And I really like that we're having the steering committee meetings, and it's a little challenging to find times when everyone's available, but monthly meetings would be good. Thank you.
Sure, I appreciate you raising that topic. The issue of, too many contractors and agencies not fundamentally having control of their mega projects, it has plagued transit projects in the U.S. I agree with the NYU findings. We're going to be bringing on additional senior level VTA employees to oversee the major contractors in this project. So we're going to not have a situation like you had in the Big Dig in Boston, for instance, where a large global engineering firm was essentially running the project with limited oversight by the public agency. So I'm actually going to build out an org chart of folks reporting to me who will have responsibility over the construction, the program management, compliance, all the major parts of the project. I will be coming to the first meeting, or the next meeting rather, of the ad hoc steering committee to show that org chart in more detail, so you can kind of see how all the boxes fit together. But the ultimate goal here is there are no contractors who are in the prime position where they're driving the project themselves without oversight, and that there's no contractors who are overseeing other contractors in a way that VTA doesn't have visibility.
Good, thank you.
All right, I don't see any other lights, so this is an informational item, so we don't need a motion. And thank you, Tom. Looking forward to working closely with you.
Likewise.
So we'll now go to other items. Item 8.1 is for items of concern and referral to administration. And we also have an update, I think, from Carolyn on a number of referrals.
Thank you. There were updates that we had deferred from last month, so this month I want to give a number. I think there's 4 of them here today, and I'm first going to turn it over to Jim Lawson, Chief External Affairs Officer, will provide an update on the efforts related to the Narcan referral.
Thank you, Carolyn. As everybody on the board knows, the opioid epidemic has become even more serious as time has gone by. Staff has met together with our union partners to examine the ways in which we can implement this request. There are a series of very good questions that have come up, including questions about training, location of the packages, how they'd be restocked, what the access to them would be. We are working diligently to come to conclusions on these, and we believe that we will have a positive response for you in the next month.
Thank you. The next one was a board referral on procurement and contracts for board approval. This one provides an update particularly on some of our procurement processes. And the board asked VTA staff to update board policies and procedures within 60 days to include a policy for transparency of contracts. Recently in November, an award was made to a firm to develop and draft a complete set of procurement policies and procedures, with work starting this month. Pending new policies and procedures, VTA staff proposes an interim policies and procedures, IPP, we call it, for contracts submitted to the board for approval. The IPP is included in the response memo to the board, and the IPP aims to bring consistency and clarity of information provided to the board with each request presented to the board for approval. The IPP also discusses the different types of procurement, such as invitation for bids, requests for proposals, and non-competitive procurements, and clearly indicates the information that will be provided to the board for each type of procurement. Irrespective of the type of procurement, each contract presented to the board will include a scope of work and total cost of the contract. Staff plans to discuss this further at the Administration and Finance Committee meeting later this month. The next referral, it was that the board also requested VTA to provide a detailed report outlining the processes and procedures VTA follows to hold contractors accountable for their interactions with subcontractors. A response memo has been prepared for the board that addresses the questions raised by the board in the referral. A few of the items addressed by the memo are the enforcement mechanisms VTA has placed in its contract to support the subcontractor, such as timely payment to the subcontractor and early release of retention. It also provides a description of audits VTA Office of Business Diversity conducts of contractor management of its subcontractors and the frequency of such audits. And finally, the memo acknowledges that there is room for improvement and that steps for improvement commenced several months prior with the development of a more well-defined procedure for subcontractor reporting of grievances, the investigation process, and the opportunity to be heard by the, we call it DBLO, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. I forget what the L is. Liaison officer. And the new procedure also includes timeframes for the DBLO response and action and issuance of a corrective action plan as necessary. And then of the last, I want to report on the respite location referral. There's an established committee at Cerrone who have already been working on this, and this is for the employees to have ability during either time between their shifts, because many do not have a continuous shift going forward, or in the evenings to take a look at what kind of needs are they for both rest and potentially and also for safety purposes, to make sure that we don't have drivers who are not safe or feeling safe to drive because of their own ability to be able to have the amount of rest that they need. The Employee Respite Committee will work on, continue to work so that, well, put it this way, there's established committee at Cerrone. There's also been a committee established, a respite committee that is for all the yards, and they're going to work together so that the efforts will not be duplicated. Some members from the Cerrone team are going to actually serve on the Employee Respite Committee. There's 7 employees from the 3 unions have volunteered to be part of the committee, along with some administrative representatives from HR, Operations, and Safety. So there's a total of 12, and the first meeting was held Tuesday, December 5th. Information has been gathered from procurement, payroll, and finance, and legal regarding hotel vouchers, which may be an option. Quiet rooms where employees can sleep and rest exist at every location, including River Oaks. There's TV rooms and recreational facilities are in the yards, but I got to say that not all of them are beautiful, we'll say. And so operations has taken inventory of all the assets in the areas as information for the committee, and then we have been looking at upgrades for all of those areas as well. Inventory is also being taken of available parking spaces at each location or vacant spaces based on the current maximum use of parking, and information has been provided to the committee by Safety, who administers the program, the RV program, on the current and prior RV program policies and procedures. And there is more information that has been requested for consideration by the committee, which was the utilization of that program at the time it was used, including now, issues that were encountered, and the reasons it was discontinued. And then we have also information on the current collective bargaining agreements regarding shifts, short breaks, and rest break requirements that has been compiled for consideration by this committee to avoid sort of these longer shifts or these longer breaks or back-to-back shifts as well. So those are all the activities that are happening on the previous referrals. I'm going to turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. I don't see any questions on that. And are there any other referrals from colleagues? Seeing none, any announcements?
Chair, if I may, there's one
I'm
hand
sorry.
raised for the update on the referrals.
Thank
Dahlia?
you.
Thank you. Blair, you may begin speaking when ready.
Thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thank you incredibly for taking public comment on item 8.1. You delivered a lot of important words on subject matter, and the fact that you're taking public comment, thank you. Good luck with Narcan issues. It's important. We've been trying to work on it, and you're finding ways to do that. Again, just an incredible thank you that the Brown Act does say that you need to offer public comment for each and every item if an item is called. And when items have a lot of facts on them, like 8.1 sometimes does, to offer public comments, really helpful. And thank you that you have today. A good meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to our final item, which is closed session. The board will be discussing items 9.1A, 9.1B, and 9.1C. The closed session items are being noted on the screen momentarily. And if any members of the public would like to address the board on our closed session items, that would be welcome at this time. These are all items on real property negotiations.
We do have one hand raised on Zoom. Blair, you may begin speaking when ready.
Hi, Blair Beekman. I wanted to speak quickly on item A of the closed session. conference, real property negotiations about portions of Santa Teresa Park and potentially Cottle Park. It's going to be helped negotiated by Ron Gollum. I just wanted to thank him for his years of work, and he taught me a very nice lesson about the differences between mixed-use development and mixed-income ideas. I mean, he taught me just to help me with the basic understandings of those two concepts. You know, how they can be similar and how they can be different. And hopefully good luck in ourselves moving forward into a mixed income future, to be thinking and talking about it more openly in the future. And just thanks again for his years of service. So thank you.
Thank you. So thanks to everybody for attending the meeting. We're going to be having the closed session in room 157. Be back in about 30 minutes. And if we don't get to see you again, hope everyone has great holidays, and thank you for a year well done. All right.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Okay, the board has returned from closed session. Evelyn, would you please provide a closed session report?
Thank you, Chair. The board did not take any reportable actions in closed session this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, and our meeting's adjourned.